So recently, well, for a while now, people have been looking for some sort of heavenly sign concerning the coming of the Messiah. Some claim it's Nibiru, a planet or whatever, just reaching for anything. And the latest one is the wolf moon, blood moon, the super moon that's in the Gregorian calendar month of January, and it was last night. Believing that some event is going to occur as a result. And people have asked me on social media and other places what my take is on it. I tell them that if it doesn't happen on a Jewish holy day, it means nothing to me. Well, last night, there has been a change in strategy in Israel's fight against Iranian infiltration into Syria. It didn't begin last night. It started with yesterday during the day in broad daylight. After Russia had told Israel not to attack Iranian assets in Syria, Israel responded by doing so in broad daylight yesterday. And then when the Iranians responded with a missile that Russians claimed that Iran did not have in Syria, Israel then returned and destroyed a bunch of air defense systems in Syria, in Damascus, and a bunch of weapons depots of the Al-Quds brigade in Syria, in the Iranian Al-Quds brigade. So what appears to be happening is a big game changer. Israel has defied Russia. Russia told them not to do it. Israel not only did it anyway, but then they did it in broad daylight and claimed responsibility for it. Two things they usually do not do. This is obviously a change in strategy, especially since they now have a new defense minister. Okay. That doesn't mean that the wolf moon, blood moon that happened last night is any sort of sign. Speaking of signs, I want to first go to what is it? I'll first go to Matthew 24 and verse 30. First thing I need to do is go ahead and put screen share on here. Matthew 24 and verse 30. We'll start in verse 29. Immediately after the tribulation of those days. What he's saying is, after the time of the Gentiles has come to an end. You can find it in other scriptures. I may go to it, but I'm getting to something here concerning the signs. I'm talking about the signs. Immediately after the tribulation of those days shall the sun be darkened, and the moon shall not give her light, and the stars, meteors shall fall from heaven, and the powers of heaven shall be shaken. Now, for folks, of course, you can find this here. You can find this in Ezekiel 38. This is not hard to do. Okay? And so if you can find this in Ezekiel 38, then you can find the other portion where it says the disciples ask, where are the people going to be going to? And he said, where the Where the eagles are gathered, that's where the dead bodies will be. Okay. Ezekiel 38. Or I should say Ezekiel 39. Verse 30, and then shall appear the sign of the Son of Man in heaven. Okay, see, here's the thing. The leaders of the Jews in this particular period of time were looking for that. This is the sign that they were looking for, that. The sign of the Son of Man in heaven. What sign was that? What's very clear among the Jews, you have to go to, we'll go to Daniel 7, okay? Now, you know, a sign is a miracle, indication, a marker, a token, right? All right. So go to Daniel 7. This is the sign that the Jews were looking for in those days. Verse 9, and I beheld till the thrones were cast down, and the Ancient of Days, that's the Father, Jehovah, did sit, whose white as snow, and the hair of his head was like pure wool. His throne was like the fiery flame, and his wheels as a burning fire. This is the throne that it talks about in the book of Ezekiel. You know, they sing that song, Ezekiel saw the wheel way up in the middle of the air. So apparently what happens is suddenly people are going to see Jehovah. It says so in Zechariah 9 in the very first verse. Although all the people of the earth are going to see him. This is going to take place. This is a sign that's going to take place in front of everyone. A fiery stream issued and came forth from before him. Thousands and thousands ministered unto him, and myriads and myriads stood before him. The judgment was set, and the books were opened. And I beheld then, because of the voice of the great words which the horn spoke. That's the king at the Vatican. And I beheld till the beast was slain, and his body destroyed, and given to the burning flame. As concerning the rest of the beasts, they had their dominion taken away, and their lives were prolonged for a season and a time. So he continues with this particular sign, right? And I saw in the night visions, and behold, one like the Son of Man came with the cloud of the sky. Right? Look up the word heavens. The sky. All right? Came with the, because there aren't any clouds as described here in outer space. It is in our atmosphere. Okay? And then came to the Ancient of Days, the Father, and they brought him near before him. This is all going to be happening on full display over Jerusalem. And there was given unto him dominion and glory and a kingdom, and all people and Ummah. That's interesting that they use the word Ummah here. And languages should serve him. His dominion and everlasting dominion which shall not pass away, in his kingdom which now shall not be destroyed. So this right here in verse 9 is the sign they're going to see, and then the continuation of the sign is in verse 13. All right? And I would suggest, if you want to see what this looks like, verse 9, go to the book of Ezekiel, where Ezekiel, I think it's in the first chapter, quite frankly. Yeah. All right. So this is the sign that the Pharisees were looking for. And what happened was this, they were told in response in Matthew 16 and verse 4. We'll start in verse 1. The Pharisees also with the Sadducees came and tempted him, desiring that they would show them a sign from heaven. They wanted to see the sign of Daniel 7. That's what they were looking for. And he answered and said unto them, when it is evening, you say, it will be fair weather, because the sky is red. Red in the night, sailors' delight. And in the morning, it will be foul weather today. Red in the morning, sailors take warning. Yes, the saying is still relevant today. For the sky is red and lowering. Oh, you hypocrites, you can discern the face of the sky, but you cannot discern the signs of the times. Because they didn't read Daniel 9. Okay? Because if they would have read Daniel 9 and did their calculation from the time, let's see, from 445, or let's see, 444 BCE until Messiah was cut off, they knew what the scripture said about that, about the 62 weeks. They knew it. But they rejected it out of hand. Just like the Christians today reject the truth about the 1 week where Titus, the Roman general, sacked Jerusalem in fulfillment of prophecy, and the Christians today reject that out of hand. So just like the Jews rejected the sign of the 62 weeks out of hand, and therefore could not see the sign that was to be in their day, so the Christians today have rejected the sign of the 1 week that occurred when Titus, the Roman general, sacked Jerusalem. And because of that, they will not recognize the sign that the Jews are looking for, that the Jews were looking for back in those days. That's going to happen at the very last. I'm sorry if that's confusing. What I'm saying is the Pharisees and the Sadducees were looking for the sign of Daniel 7 and verse 9 and 13, when they should have been looking for the sign of Daniel 9 and verse 27. And the Christians today reject the sign of Daniel 9 and verse 27 and are expecting the Antichrist instead, as they say. Okay, I think I've made that abundantly clear. All right. So, shall I go to, is it? Okay. I'll go back to Matthew 24. Okay, verse 29. Immediately after the tribulation of those days, when the 77s of Daniel 9 are finished, and I have gone over many times, and I'll probably go over it again one day. Daniel 9. Immediately after tribulation of those days, That's after 77s of Daniel 9 are finished. And I believe they are either finished or just about finished. Shall the sun be darkened, and the moon shall not give her light, and the stars shall fall from heaven, and the powers of heaven shall be shaken. Well, we see this event happening in Joel 2, Joel 3, Ezekiel 38 and 39. Okay? And then shall appear the sign of the Son of Man in heaven. Remember we just read that's what the Pharisees and the Sadducees were looking for. It's right here. Okay, let's look at it again. Verse 1. The Pharisees also with the Sadducees came and tempted, desiring him that it would show them a sign from heaven. That sign. Daniel 9. Then he says, a wicked and adulterous generation seeks after a sign. They weren't, if they would have read Daniel 9, they would have realized that they weren't going to see a sign. They were not going to see that sign in that generation. If they would have just read it, they would have read Daniel 9, they would have known. They would not have received that sign. So he says, there shall be no sign given unto that generation, except the sign of the prophet Jonah. And he left them and departed. So which generation is going to see that sign? When the time of the Gentiles comes to an end. Let me go ahead and look up time of the Gentiles. Okay, Luke 21:24. Verse 20, and when you shall see Jerusalem compassed with armies. Who is he talking about? Titus the Roman general. When was that prophesied? Daniel 9, verse 27. Then you know that its desolation is nigh. Did he make it desolate? Yes, he did. Then let them which are in Judea flee into the mountains. Some of them heeded that warning, others did not. And let them which are in the middle of Jerusalem depart. Some of them did, some of them didn't. And let them that are in the countryside, let them not that are in the countryside enter back into Jerusalem or the countryside. They had to run for their lives. For those be the day of vengeance. Vengeance for what? For rejection of Messiah. So that all things that are written may be fulfilled. What? Book of Isaiah. But woe unto those that are with child and them which give suck in those days, for there shall be great distress in the Eretz and wrath upon this people. It already happened, folks. If it's already happened, then it's not going to happen anymore. It's over. And they shall fall by the edge of the sword, and did they ever? And they shall be led away captive into all nations, and did they ever? If you don't believe it, then you are foolish and blind. And Jerusalem shall be trodden down of the Gentiles, and it was, and it has been for over, or nearly 2,000 years. Until 3.5 years is over? No. Until the time of the Gentiles is fulfilled. In other words, comes to the end. Let's look up the word This is exactly what Paul was referring to in Romans 11 and verse 25. To be complete, finished. To fill the capacity, in other words, the end of the days of the Gentiles. It's not going to be never ending, folks. To the extent that it was meet, in other words, to the extent that it was given. And then when that extent is finished, it's done. Okay. Then what happens? And then there shall be the signs in the sun, in the heavens, and the moon, and in the stars, and upon the earth, the stress of nations, and with the perplexity of the sea and the waves roaring. So we have men's hearts failing them because of fear, because of looking after those things which are coming, which are happening on the earth. Because the powers of heaven shall be shaken. We just read it. And they shall see. What are they going to see? They're going to see Daniel 9 in action. Daniel 9? No, Daniel 7 in action. When they shall see the Son of Man coming in a cloud with power and great glory. They will also see our Father in heaven, or him coming to our Father in heaven to receive that kingdom, exactly as Daniel 7 says, the very sign that the Jews were looking for and are still looking for it. And they're going to get it, and they're going to believe. Yes, that's right, folks. The Jews have been looking for the sign of Luke 21, verses 25 through 28. They have been looking for it. They forgot. They forgot about the sign of the 62 weeks, but they are still looking for this sign. However, the Christians are not looking for this sign. They are not. And I can prove it. And I will proceed to do so here in just a minute. So once again, the Jews are looking for Luke 21 and verse 25, and there shall be signs in the sun and the moon and in the stars, and upon the earth great distress of nations with perplexity, the seas and waves roaring. The Jews know what they're going to have to do when this happens. They know it. They know they're going to have to go back to Israel. They know it. But do the Christians know this? So Matthew 20, let's see, is it Matthew 24? Verse 29, immediately after the tribulation of those days shall the sun be darkened, and the moon shall not give her light. These are the signs. And the stars shall fall from heaven, the powers of heaven shall be shaken, and then shall appear the sign of the Son of Man in heaven. At this point in time, the Jews are going to know this is it. This is the Messiah. This is the sign of Daniel 7. They're going to know it. But what about the rest of the world? And then shall all the tribes of the earth shout, yip, yip, hooray? No. No, they won't. They're going to be doing the opposite. Why? Because they have been deceived into believing that Israel's Messiah is their Antichrist. Then shall the tribes of the earth mourn when they shall see the Son of Man coming in the clouds of heaven with power and great glory. No, they will not. The Gentiles will not be looking for this sign, but the Jews will be, which brings me to the parable of the 5 wise and 5 virgins. Now, as I pointed out in the parable of the sheep and the goats, it makes very clear in verse 31. Actually, in verse 32, it says, and before him were gathered all the nations. Let's go to Strong's Concordance to make my point. Nations. It is ethnos in Greek, 1484. Look it up in Strong's Concordance. And what does it say? Gentiles. Let's go back then. This is the Gentiles being divided. There are no Israelites in this group here. The reason is because the Israelites are the people who he said, because you have done it unto the least of these my brethren, you have done it unto me. That's who he's talking. They're already in his realm. They have been taken there. So there are two groups of people that believe in a Messiah. But one group is the Jews and the other group is the Gentiles. The Jews got it wrong the first time, and the Gentiles are going to get it wrong the second time. This is how the separation of the Israelites and the Gentiles is going to occur. And it is, okay, so verse 31, and he shall send his angels with a great sound of a trumpet, and they shall gather together his elect from the four winds, from one end of heaven to the other. All right, what? Who are the elect? Okay, let us go to Isaiah 45. We will find out who the elect are. Go to King James Version, because the Berean version wants to hide the truth. Verse 4, for Jacob my servant's sake, and Israel mine elect. All right? Any of you who doubt it, you will learn the hard way. Even Paul recognized it. Paul, the apostle to the Gentiles. Let's go to Romans 11. Romans 11, verse 25. For I would not, brethren, that you should be ignorant of this mystery, lest you should be wise in your own conceits, that blindness in part has happened to Israel until the fullness of the Gentiles be come in. Exactly as the Messiah said. Fullness of the Gentiles has come to an end. And so, at that point, all Israel shall be saved, as it is written, there shall come out of Zion the deliverer, and shall turn away ungodliness or unpiousness from Jacob. For this is my new covenant, as per Jeremiah 31, verses 31 through 34, and Hebrews 8, verses 8 through 12, unto them when I shall take away their sins. Now, concerning the gospel, he's talking to the Romans. They are enemies for your sakes, but concerning the election, they are the beloved for the patriarch's sakes. In other words, they are the elect. This is what he's saying. So, the elect for the patriarch's sakes are going to be gathered. From the four winds. Matthew 24 and verse 31. From one end of the sky unto the sky? Sky travel? You see, folks, the two Bible scholars, Darby and Schofield, came up with this rapture theory. Why? Because the ancient church fathers, as they say, said that the words of the prophets don't matter anymore. When clearly Yehoshua and all the apostles quoted the prophets often. Well, the prophet Isaiah speaks of sky travel from one end of the sky unto the other. Let's go there. Isaiah 60. Okay, this is obviously the future glory of Zion. Arise, shine, for thy light is come. The glory of Jehovah is risen upon you. For behold, the darkness. What? The sun shall be turned into darkness. We just read that. That's part of the signs, isn't that right? We just read it, did we not? Did we not? Verse 20, Matthew 24. Immediately after the tribulation of those days shall the sun be darkened. Okay, so we go to Isaiah 60, and what do we see? We see the sun being darkened. And gross darkness the people. But Jehovah shall arise upon you, and his glory shall be seen. Yes, they're going to see Jehovah on his throne. His hair white like fine wool, clothed in white on his throne, and they're going to see the Son of Man come to him to receive this kingdom. And because there is no light, the Gentiles are going to be forced to come to the light. Lift up your eyes round about and see all. Who? All of what? They all gather themselves together. They come to you. Who? Your sons, Zion, shall come from afar. This is the elect being gathered together from the four winds of heaven. And your daughters shall be nursed at your side. How is this going to happen? Verse 8, who are these that fly as a cloud? Fly? Like doves to their windows. Are they going to be flapping their hands and flying? Well, if people would read, now we got to understand this is translated from Hebrew to English, and King James Version is not very clear on this, but there are other versions that are. The coastlands, the people in the coastlands that wait for him. Who are they? Those who are looking for Daniel 7. The sign of Daniel 7. Those people. Who are they? Israelites, Jews. Now the ships of Tarshish, first to bring your sons from afar. Okay, wait a minute. Hold it. Let's examine this for a minute. They're going to be flying, right? Isn't that what it says here? Right here in verse 8. They're going to be flying as a cloud among the clouds, right? The ships of Tarshish first. The ships of Tarshish taking the lead. Do ships fly? Yes, they do. Not all ships. We have airliners today that fly. In the days of Schofield and Darby, there were no aircraft. So their rapture theory is wrong, but just as the flat earthers today still believe in the flat earth theory, of ancient Christians, crusaders, so the rapture theorists still believe that there are going to be no flying ships when people fly on ships every day. It's one of those things where you have the obvious happening and people still don't believe it. Where it's obvious that the earth is round, where it's obvious that ships do fly today, but people don't believe it. Okay, I think I've so the ships of Tarshish first. That means the ships of the Atlantic. Why? Because at this particular point in time, the vast majority of the Jews and Israelites are where? In the Atlantic. Them first, but not limited to the ships of Tarshish. They're going to be coming in from every corner of the earth, north, south, east, and west, which is Tarshish. Okay? These are who? These are the elect. These are Israel, the elect. Isaiah 45 and verse 4 and 5. Now, parable of the 5 wise and 5 virgins. Now, what you realize now, you should realize by now, that the 5 wise and the 5 foolish virgins are the Jews and the Christians. This is what I'm getting at this morning. I have proven this to you through the signs that people seek. Today, Jews are looking for the sign of the Messiah as written in Daniel 7. Today, also, the Christians are looking for the Antichrist. They're not looking for the Messiah. They're looking for the Antichrist. It is unfortunate that they do not read the prophets. Just like it was unfortunate that the Jews in the days of the crooked generation did not read the prophets. So, that in mind, let's start in verse 1. And then shall the kingdom of heaven be likened unto 10 virgins, which took their lamps and went forth to meet the bridegroom. They're both looking for a Messiah. And 5 of them were wise, and 5 were foolish. And they that were foolish took their lamps, and they took no oil with them. Okay, what is the oil? The oil is truth, because truth provides light. Without truth, there is no light. Therefore, the oil is the truth. Now, the truth is in Daniel 7. It's coming. The Jews know this. They believe it. Therefore, they have oil in their lamps. Shocking, isn't it? But the Christians today don't have any oil in their lamps. Why? Because they are looking for the Antichrist. And they have been worshiping anti-Messiah all along. They do not even know it. They're not looking for the Messiah. They're not looking for Israel's Messiah. In fact, there are many Christian preachers today that claim that the Antichrist is going to be a Jew. Let me show you something. Jerry Falwell was one of those. Where did he come up with this? This is in January. This was pointed out in January 16, 1999. Antichrist is alive and a male Jew, Falwell contends. Okay. Let's have a look at this. Moral majority. Remember how the moral majority put Ronald Reagan into power, into presidency back in the day. Let's see here. Civil rights, Israel and the Jews. His staunch pro-Israel stand, sometimes referred to as Christian Zionism. Are you telling me Christian Zionism believes that Israel's or the anti-Messiah is yet to come? And that he's a Jew? Where is this? It's too long. So I'll never be able to find it, but you saw it in the summary here. Oh, and they claim, oh, he only meant to say that the Antichrist must be Jewish because, as they say, Jesus Christ was a Jew. Well, the Bible makes abundantly clear that Israel's anti-Messiah is a Gentile. So why did Jerry Falwell deceive the masses in the United States and around the world into believing that anti-Messiah is going to be a Jew? Why is this? So that when the Israel's Messiah comes, that's what they are going to believe. And that's the reason why, folks, the Gentiles of the earth, the tribes of the earth are going to mourn when they shall see the Son of Man. Matthew 24 and verse 30, and then shall appear the sign of the Son of Man in heaven, exactly as written in Daniel 7, exactly as the Jews are hoping for. And what are the Christians going to do? Exactly as they've been taught, believing he is the Antichrist. And then shall the tribes of the earth mourn, and they shall see the Son of Man coming in the cloud of heaven with power and great glory. Now, I lift up your head because there we go. So Luke is getting a little bit more descriptive here in verse 25 through 28. Now in verse 28, what does he say? He's talking to the disciples who were Jews. And the 12 apostles were commissioned to only go to the Israelites. And he said, and when these things begin to come to pass, what things? The sign in the sun and the moon and the stars, the signs in heaven. Daniel 7. These things shall begin to pass, then look up, Israelites, look up, O you elect, and lift up your heads, because your redemption draws nigh. So why is it? Why? Oh, why is it that the 5 foolish virgins didn't get it? Because they were not looking for Daniel 7. They were not looking for the truth. Therefore, they had no oil in their lamps. When the time of the Gentiles comes to an end, you will see the signs in heaven. you will see the prophecy of Daniel 7 in action. You will see the throne of Jehovah appear over Jerusalem. Verse 4, but the wise took oil in their vessels with their lamps. They took the truth with them, carried it with them wherever they went. Daniel 7. While the bridegroom tarried, they all slumbered and slept. But the Jews still carried the truth with them. Daniel 7. The Gentiles did not. And at midnight there was a cry made, behold, the bridegroom cometh, go you out to meet him. Then all those virgins arose and trimmed their lamps. Why? Because it was dark. Darkness covered the face of the earth. The sun became dark. And the foolish said unto wise, give us your oil, for our lamps are gone out. They're confused. They don't know what's going on. They don't know what to believe. But the wise answered, saying, not so, lest there be not enough for us and you, but rather go to them that sell and buy for yourselves. And while they went to buy, the bridegroom came. And of course, if the five foolish would have believed that the bridegroom was the Messiah, they would have gone as well. But they didn't. They didn't believe he was the Messiah, which is why they mourned. They believed he was something else other than the Messiah. And they that were ready, they that were prepared, went in with him to the marriage. They went. They went with their feet. They went on planes. They went on ships. They went on whatever was available to them to go. Isaiah 60 says ships, flying ships. And then the immigration door was shut. And just exactly as it says in Matthew, it's in the very same chapter, that the others, the Gentiles, came afterward, after the door was shut, saying, Master, Master, open to us. And he answered and said, Verily, verily, I say unto you, I know you not. Watch you therefore, for you know neither the day nor the hour wherein the Son of Man comes. Now, does this right here conflict with the parable of the sheep and the goats? No. Because this section right here is a separation of the Israelites and the Gentiles. This down here, the gate is shut. The door is shut. And he's going to peel from the Gentiles, those who are righteous among the nations, and the rest are going to have to stay behind or stay outside the shut door. This is the same chapter after all, is it not? You think I'm wrong about this? Prove it. I just use a scripture proving it. It's proving this, my contention here, to be accurate. So, while Israel and Russia are stepping up their battle with each other, you better figure out Daniel 7 and the timeline, and you better figure out Daniel 9 and its timeline. Because if you don't, you won't have any oil prepared for your lamp.